Hello and welcome to another episode of Bootleg University, the only film school where the instructors have to take out loans to teach you. My name is Sam Lasky. I am the one of the writers and producers of the Guardians of Justice. I am joined by Kenlyn Clark.
I'm also one of the directors on Guardians of Justice and editor as well.
And the wonderful Graham Hughes.
Hi, I'm a lead VFX designer and multi-purpose human multi-tool.
All things.
Yeah. Today we are going to be talking about storyboards, previs, and planning your shoot. Ken is a very notorious and extensive storyboarder and kind of a good visual artist in his own right. His storyboards look really nice. So I'm going to start with this. A couple weeks ago, I went to a double feature of Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and Fitzcarraldo, two of the greatest movies ever made. And the director, Werner Herzog, gave a Q&A afterwards. He was asked by one of the people in the audience, your movies are so elaborate and the shoots are so difficult. How do you plan? Do you storyboard? Do you map out your shots? And he said, storyboards are for cowards.
For example, I do not use a storyboard. I think it's an instrument of the cowards.
So I guess, Ken, my question for you is this. Why are you such a goddamn coward? Is it because your father didn't love you enough?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. I'll say this, because I love that we're starting off with a hot take. And of course, I love Werner Herzog. I watched his master class, which was very, very informative and entertaining. Yeah.
I got to pause here. For the youth who might be watching, you know Werner Herzog as the guy who hires the Mandalorian to kidnap Baby Yoda.
Yes.
But he is also one of the greatest filmmakers of all time.
He also says penis on Rick and Morty.
I've dwelt among the humans. Their entire culture is built around their penises. It's funny to say they're small. It's funny to say they're big. I've been at parties where humans have held bottles, pencils, thermoses in front of themselves and called out, hey, look at me, I'm Mr. So-and-so Dick. I've got such and such for a penis. I never saw it fail to get a laugh.
That's right. Yep. That's right.
He played the villain in the first Jack Reacher movie with Tom Cruise, if you saw that.
He has a great episode on Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Where he's selling his house to move to Orlando to be closer to Disney World.
Yes. So I'll say this, obviously, I, like most other filmmakers, revere and respect Werner Herzog. And I'll say that if, storyboarding is for cowards, though, then it's a good company to keep, because there are a lot of great filmmakers who notoriously use storyboards as a great tool of communication. I think that there's a couple of things I would say to that is I think that there is it's very exciting to be on set. It's very exciting to be in the moment, thinking and creating, reacting to things, being very instinctual. And really digging deep and I think and I'm not going to speak for Werner Herzog, by the way, but I think that perspective is very much yes, you want to kind of push yourself to your limit and be in that zone where you have to dig really, really deep to think of something. And in doing that you'll kind of funnel your way into this, this zone of inspiration. And he's not entirely wrong. It's just that storyboards aren't about necessarily trying to mitigate, disaster or inspiration or any of those type of things. It's about communication. And that's ultimately what it is as a tool. So a lot of people, I think, obviously this is a great example. This is the great Alfred Hitchcock, somebody who notoriously storyboarded and a filmmaker that we remember and still talk about pretty much every day. He hasn't been forgotten. Many filmmakers who've even made great films, disappear from the from the popular zeitgeist, but somebody like Alfred Hitchcock hasn't. And a lot of that is because of how well constructed his scenes and sequences are. And of course, he's very famously quoted as saying that, like, when he would be on set, he would look bored, and it's because
fall asleep,
and it's because he's already made the movie in the storyboarding process. So I think that a lot of people think that, oh, if you're storyboarding, you're completely locking yourself into something and you're not being present. I think that that's one of the things that I would say that, again, I'm not speaking for the great Werner Herzog, but I think that his take on things, his approach is very much being very present in the moment and allowing the kind of like moment that you're in to help you, go through your story visually, to figure out what you need to do, as opposed to, you did this months earlier. Now you're here on set and you're locking yourself into some type of vision that, things could have changed.
Right.
But I think one of the things to understand as well is that you're not locked into your storyboards. Your storyboards are there for communicating to the people who are around you, and making sure that they are understanding, and you can explain things 50 times to 50 different people. Every single person might have their own take on things, and that's fine as well. Like, you might like that kind of chaotic way of operating. But if you are dealing with some more technical aspects, I think it's important that the various people that you are working with are all on the same page. And a picture says, a picture speaks 1,000 words, or however the saying goes. And that's essentially what a storyboard does, is it conveys very quickly to a lot of people. They're all seeing the same thing, and they can be united in what you're trying to accomplish. The other thing is that people want to, they feel as though that if you're if you're on set with storyboards, that you're going to be, you're removing a certain level of inspiration and chaos. But anybody who's ever been on a film set, especially even with storyboards, understands that that's always present.
There's no shortage of chaos.
There's no shortage of chaos.
You meticulously storyboard things, but we were improvising up a storm, shots,
yes,
sequences on set.
Yes.
When we saw what it...
100%. We added things. I think that, like, on some level, if you want to think about the cowardice aspect of storyboarding, I think that you could say, well, you think through all these shots, and as long as, let's say, your day finished, you walked away with these shots, you can probably make this sequence work in the edit. Mm-hmm. But what you want to do is you take them and then you add stuff to them. You bounce off of this visual and go, let's add something here. Let's throw something in there. Let's get as much cool stuff as possible. And hopefully as well, you are getting shots that are key and signature. You're not just, garbage collecting. You are being very, very specific. Here's one more thing. Okay. Sorry. Now I'm getting on my soapbox. Here's the other thing, is that the glory of wanting to be on set as a filmmaker is very seductive, because you really feel you're making a movie, you're making a TV show, you're making whatever you're doing. When you are on set, when you are telling the camera where to be, and you're telling the directors, the actor, and you're doing all those things. But when you really experience the process of filmmaking, you understand that the pre-production process, which is in some ways can be very boring to people, because it requires you to, just like writing, to sit in a room by yourself, probably quiet, maybe you got music playing, who knows, but you have to just sit there with your own thoughts and figure this thing out on a piece of paper. And that is not as, like, I'll just say, glamorous or seductive as the idea of being on set with a lot of people and really feeling that energy of making something. But it's just as crucial and just as important to sit there and work things out in advance. It's kind of like saying, like, having architectural plans to build a skyscraper is a cowardice approach to things. Like, would you want to walk into that building knowing that they just were winging it because the inspiration and their know-how was so great that they could figure out how this building was going to be built on the day of? You wouldn't want to set a foot in that building.
What is my life compared to artistic integrity at the end of the day?
Yes, exactly.
Well, the comparison I would make to, my part of the filmmaking process is just because I've written a screenplay doesn't mean you can't improvise dialogue on set.
Right.
So to build off of the points that you're making, here we have storyboards for something that didn't make it into the show, and in fact we kind of scrapped on set because it wasn't working. We had, when we were thinking about the additional photography you and I wanted to do, and specifically beefing up Speed's character, we knew we were going to do a new introduction for her character in episode 1, which we did shoot a new introduction for her character, but one idea we had was that before she got her fast force powers, she was in a wheelchair. The fast force not just made her super fast, but gave her back the ability to walk. It's sort of a classic superhero thing of going from 0 to 100 instead of like 50 to 100. And so we had the idea that maybe she still used a wheelchair going around her lab because she had got used to it for so long. It ended up not working because it was too much to explain to the audience. Like, if we ever do a Speed origin story movie, I'm going to include that, but it didn't work on set. So we ended up scrapping it, and you storyboarded all this stuff with her in the wheelchair, and then we filmed something completely different. So what is the program that you're using? I mean, is this just on a piece of paper?
I mean, my process has evolved and continues to evolve almost every day. Like, I would love to say that I have one way of doing everything. And in a weird way, I'm kind of always looking for that. But
this is just a sheet of paper.
This is just a sheet of paper. These are some books I bought off of Amazon that were pre-made storyboards. This is just, I'm drawing with a Zebra F301 pen that you could buy at CVS. Best pen ever.
Style, precision, and performance. Find strength in steel. Find zen in your pen. Zebra pen.
And yeah, I'm just sketching. And so a lot of times, storyboards, I do like to keep them kind of loose and obviously throw in a little camera movement.
I like how you even have to like shade the arrow to make sure we know exactly.
Yes, that it's 3-dimensional in the drawing. And I'm just sketching pretty quickly, just kind of going through a lot of things, and obviously here, seeing what would be a visual effect. And in some ways, a lot of this, like, this is in the there's basically a version of that's in the show, where we have Sharni moving at super speed, and then Graham probably, I'm assuming you probably created the visual effects that go along with it. So stuff like that. It just, I don't know, it's just a communication tool. It helps people to kind of know the direction of where you're going. I think that it's a valuable tool to help the people around you feel comfortable as well, and also seeing where they can jump in. And I don't tell anybody like, I'm some type of whatever control freak with this type of thing. That's not what the process of storyboarding is about. It's just about trying to give as much information to the people around you that they also can have inspiration and then go, well, what about this or what about that? And
it's the opposite of controlling. It's a collaboration tool, right?
Yes. Thank you, Graham. That's exactly what it is. So and I've used it on even music videos that I've directed over the years, everything. And, there's always varying degrees of qualities in the drawings. And as an artist, I'm always a little doing my best to make it look pretty. But a lot of times it's not that either. I mean, there are phenomenal, by the way, I just want to make sure I say that, like, I'm coming at this from a director who likes to storyboard. I wouldn't necessarily, there's storyboard artists who are absolutely phenomenal artists, like, who do huge productions all around the world. I am not necessarily coming at this from that perspective, that I'm, whatever, storyboarding the Fast and Furious movie or whatever. This is for another director. This is my process as a filmmaker, and hopefully people who are watching this, like if you are wanting to make your own productions, this is how I incorporate it as a director into what I'm doing.
And they're, some of them are more complicated than others.
Yeah.
So,
and some of it's just very, very loose, sketchy drawing, like enough to convey that this is a character and they're standing there and you can see their face. One key thing, and I don't do this as much anymore when I storyboard, but I remember when people were, back in the day when it kind of was a process introduced to me in my teenage years, was people basically said, and I don't think I have a good example on here, but you can just draw, you draw a little arrow where the nose is. So as long as people can kind of understand which direction your little circle is facing, just draw the little arrow for where the nose is. And then people know, oh, this is from the side or whatever, they're facing this direction, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah.
Now, you, growing up, wanted to be a comic book artist, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was like one of my, I'll say, many creative aspirations.
And then your dreams were crushed? Just a little bit?
Just destroyed? No. I wanted to do comic book, obviously, artworks, comic book artwork, artists have always been a big inspiration for me. It just evolved into movies. Movies became, so when I was very, very young, I really enjoyed drawing. And then I started making animations on a whiteboard when I was in junior high and high school. And so this was in the 90s, and I had a VHS camera, and I would just set it up in the kitchen and draw. And it was very I wasn't storyboard. It was like storyboarding, and I didn't have a script, and I would do these elaborate, like half an hour whiteboard animations. One of them got me a scholarship to film school, a farm safety commercial, because I grew up in a farming community. And even though I didn't grow up on a farm, and it was a superhero thing. His name was Farm Safety Man. But that was, something that I would basically do, is just drawing on this whiteboard. And so then it evolved into just like then live action, just making movies with your friends and all those type of things. But I love, obviously, comic books, comic book artists.
Now, you said something in that I want to expand upon, because I think I'm not sure I understood correctly. VHS.
Yeah. VHS was, what it was large cassette tapes. That's the funnest thing. I was explaining to my niece, me and my wife were explaining to my niece a little while ago, like what the process was of watching a movie when we were young. Like you would go to a store and you would walk in and all the movies were in boxes. And like, to kids these days, like where it's, no, you turn on the TV and you press a button. Like, no, we would drive somewhere and pay money for a box that we would then take home, and it had this reel inside, and everybody had to be there at the same time to watch it.
You would forget that you had taken this thing home, and then a week later you owed $50.
Yes, and if you were late, you had to pay a fee to everything. Like, and everyone would have to sit there and decide on which movie. There was 10 people all trying to, So yeah, good old VHS.
So these are the storyboards for the claymation fight scene between Speed and Nighthawk in episode 7.
Yes. I'm trying to remember how, in some ways, because it's been a little while, like trying to remember exactly what the process was. I think that I initially just did this, like these very just sketchy style, like, oh, this would be the way to go, and then built it up from there.
And I think we had the idea for this sequence long before we knew it was going to be in claymation.
Right.
This was part of our process that we've talked about on previous episodes about building the big climactic fight sequences in episode 7. We knew that we wanted to have some kind of physical confrontation between Speed and Nighthawk. We knew that the Flash fighting Batman doesn't really make any sense, because the Flash can just run around and punch him really fast. So we wanted to give Nighthawk an exoskeleton. So here's your initial sort of concept for the exoskeleton. I mean, it's basically what Batman uses in Batman v Superman to make that fight work.
Yeah, right.
And then here we have before and after. You can see the storyboards and the finished product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I sketched these in Storyboard Pro.
Storyboard Pro being
Storyboard Pro is I basically say the industry leading storyboard software created by Toon Boom.
What makes it different from an ordinary drawing program?
You can do. I would say that this is not the best example of the capabilities of Storyboard Pro, but you can do mostly when you see like a lot of animated previs, like you can see the multiple movements. You can do camera movements. It has an excellent perspective guide when drawing. I think it's probably the best one that there is in terms of drawing perspective very quickly and being very accurate. So I just sketched these in Storyboard Pro.
And you did that on
this? No, I did it on this one. I did it on an XP Pen, the Huion XP Pen drawing pad. It's about 15 inches across, and it plugs into my laptop. And I did that on that. I still use that for the most part, but I have.
Why don't you show off your mobile version?
Yeah, I've kind of moved to the iPad, and I absolutely love drawing on this. Like, it has really come a long, long way in terms of being able to draw.
I thought you had brought your black and white one.
Wait, which black and white one?
The one you draw on. Specifically drawing.
Oh, I do have that one too.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, it's in my bag. I forgot to pull it out.
Well, edit this part out, Graham. Pull it out. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, I might make sure I got it. Yes. Sorry, that's right. People can see all the different tools.
All
yes.
Right.
So
this is your drawing specific tablet.
Yes, I love this. This is a remarkable tablet. By the way, this podcast is not sponsored by Remarkable or Huion.
It's the sort of the original Kindle technology that looks like newsprint.
Yes. Yeah. And so this one is really, really fun. And what's funny about this is, like it says on their website, it's a tool for thinking. Mm-hmm. And I really, really love that approach. And so it's a piece of technology that you can't watch movies on it. You can't go on YouTube. You can't listen to music. It's specifically for drawing. Well, for me, drawing and writing or reading. And so, I'm sure I remember
it has a password.
It does have a password.
So no one can steal your artwork.
Precious ideas.
Yes. So it is and what's cool about it is it has actual storyboarding. It has actual storyboarding templates. Let me just find something really quickly here. Graham, edit this out. Stand
Graham,
by.
If you're nice.
Edit.
Yeah.
We're waiting.
We're waiting.
Can we jump forward?
So, okay. So this is kind of a cool thing. Let me see. Okay, so it has pre-made storyboard templates that you can just create real quickly, and then you can make sure I got this, and I can just draw on it. It feels very much like paper. It's really, really cool, and you can do layers, so I can draw it, and then you can just flip through the pages. This is an action sequence, and just do very kind of cool. Kind of down and dirty style storyboards, and then this is where I start to get lazy, is like where I'm just like, okay, there's eyes, and then these guys are dead because they've got little X's on their, like, you get it, and I go through. That's the thing. I do go through varying degrees of quality when I'm drawing. Like, you start off with lofty ambitions, and then you get 100 pages in of sketching like this, and you're like, you know what? They get the idea.
It's the same in writing. Sometimes when you have 120 pages already, just put, and then they fight.
Yeah. So it's cool. And you can see, I'll show you real quick. I can flip through it like this, but you can see how much I've done on this thing. I mean, it just goes on and on and on in terms of drawing and drawing and drawing So, yeah, it's really fun. I love I'll say this is one of the tools that I like to use clearly. And then the Huion tablet, which I use for Storyboard Pro, and if you want to do more elaborate, it's just bigger, so it gives you a bigger drawing space. And then the iPad has really become a big tool for me recently as well. Let me just show. So there's a couple different things you can do in this one. Like this is, let me just pick something. So this one, this is paper. This is the paper program, and you can just really do cool stuff and just kind of draw, kind of create this watercolory type of vibe to things. And then obviously you have all your little tools, and you can just kind of make it look however you want, and flip through it like a notebook and just do something really cool that you want to create these scenes and sequences. So that's the iPad paper is a really, really great tool as well. So yeah.
So on this sequence, yes. So this is a cool one because you storyboarded it completely. It's all your shots, your concepts, your direction. But we sent this off to Pangor Animation in Spain. It's our main claymation company. Do tremendous work, and they just followed your directives. And like you said, the ability to just communicate to the team you're working with is so important.
Mm-hmm. So you can include these cool character moments.
Now, what's also great about Pangor, just to go off on a little tangent, you hadn't included like the anime lines and stuff that we've talked about with Graham in previous episodes. They sent me an email. It was like, I think in order for this sequence to work, we have to add anime lines. And I was like, you guys get us.
Yes, 100%. And their work is absolutely tremendous. Like this is...
I like that they clearly add a lot of character of their own to each of these shots too. It's not just like following the storyboards to the letter. There's all kinds of extra stuff they're doing.
100%. And they threw a couple really cool insert shots in there. I think right here where you see her fist charging, which is a really great, kind of thing to communicate that. And their expressions, just how they maintain the character of Speed so well in this claymation sequence is really remarkable. And I was flattered, to be honest, when I saw, that they respected the boards and, obviously added their own take, which is what you want. That's what you always want, like great artists to come in and just, make something look so cool, so amazing. And, yeah. So
it's probably one of my favorite sequences.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they are incredible. Yeah. So
it was just always a joy to like send them something, and then a month later you'd get it and you'd be like still surprised by how cool it was.
Yeah, what they did was, I mean, when I saw it, I was like, this is even way cooler than what I was picturing. So yeah.
All right, so let's move on to what you're currently planning.
Oh yes.
Right now. Do you want to do the hospital scene, or do you want to do the big one?
Let's do the hospital scene's probably, I think, a good combination. Okay, so this is the storyboards drawn in paper initially
for
Puppet Gangster, a sequence in Puppet Gangster,
which is the project you're planning on directing next.
Yeah, and so this is where a character essentially drops off another character to get them to do this hit, and things go awry. But yeah, so this is essentially sketched in paper on the iPad. I like the kind of watercolor look, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and And so, yeah, so you're kind of seeing these different things. And then I do have a previs animated version of this as well. Yeah, so I'm kind of going through, and this one, I knew that I actually knew I was going to previs this. So when I drew that, I didn't draw the background. I drew the background there so that this could just be cut out, and then I could layer these different shots together. So you're getting like, the foreground, background. I like extreme close-ups. So this hand shot goes over this, and then there's a kind of a rack focus between the two.
All right. So you've then taken these storyboards and created a previs.
The hospital shootout. Yeah.
A previs sequence. Do you want to set this up at all? This
is kind of what you were just seeing. I mean, it's more or less just this action sequence.
And what software are you using to put all this together?
This one I drew in paper and then edited in Adobe Premiere. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. There's one other aspect to this. This is also, so I originally drew backgrounds, and then when I was going through it, and I've talked about this on the on our video cast before, is the Backlot software, where you can create 3D backgrounds for previs. And those guys are great, by the way. And shout out to Backlot. And so there's a bit of a mixture of my drawings mixed with background that I was able to create. So they didn't have this like hospital set. I downloaded the elements and then put it together the best that I could. I'm not a Graham Hughes, okay? But enough to create like the set. And actually it was very close to what I was picturing in my head in terms of how things would be laid out. So so then I took that and then I put my drawings over it, and it's a little, kind of just putting it all together the best that it can, but enough to convey the sequence.
Just tell me if you want to pause.
Oh, sure. So we can see.
Right. So as you pointed out before, you drew the background in a separate thing in paper, and you drew the foreground, and then just
put them all together.
A little bit of motion.
Yeah. So you see we're following the character down, and then you do have 3D characters. And so you'll see I threw in an actual 3D character.
And from Backlot.
From Backlot, yeah. So you can do these cool characters. And you keep playing. So you can get this rack focus. Like these tension building sequences. And then all of a sudden there's some cops who are there. I kept one of them 3D and one of them normal. And I tried my best to kind of, get this kind of him falling. And then, he's...
So they have preset animations for the characters,
yes.
I assume?
Yeah, so you can just drop on the actual movement.
And you don't need to be an animator.
You don't need to be an animator. So when he rolled off the bed like that, I literally looked up roll and typed it in, and sure enough, and then you can drop it on the character, and all of a sudden you can then, using keyframe points, you can direct which from here to here.
But it's all about doing it quickly, crudely.
Yes.
Just get the important information on the screen.
Yes.
You're like essentially directing the final version of the scene.
Yeah.
Ahead of time.
And to be clear, when you say the title is Puppet Gangster.
This is the puppet. And he's a gangster.
But he's a detective.
Right.
So shouldn't it be called Puppet Detective?
That's what? That's up for the audience to decide. Which one is he?
I think you need a new title.
100%. This is a working title, but yeah. But yeah, so, you can get this. So you can get these just, really a sense of movement. where everybody is in relation to each other. Obviously, kind of an energy. And, you know, it's a little bit of a... Get a little Matrix action.
The sound effects are great.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So...
It's interesting with being able to, you know, just do like a full motion animatic ahead of time where you're essentially directing the scene, plus like on the VFX side, the rise of things like Unreal Engine, where you can do a lot of your post-production ahead of time and use them in the production. It really, you know, all these tools just open up the ability for the directors and actors on set to just focus on getting performance rather than having to worry about like technical stuff.
Yes, exactly. Because you're walking through that in advance in a more low pressure setting. And so when you're walking on, the thing is like, you know, the actual shooting process is very expensive. You have a limited amount of time. You have a lot of people who are all having to do jobs, and you want to be able to walk out of there, hopefully with the best best material you can, and not have to come back later. That's always like, I can't even tell you, even as somebody who, you know, storyboards and has directed a lot, like you always are driving home from something going like, oh man, did I get that shot? Can this work? And blah, blah, blah. But that's where also, you know, editing also comes in to like really help kind of tie a lot of these things together. But storyboarding, previs, all that lets you step into the situation as prepared as possible. And I don't think that there's ever anything bad or wrong about feeling as prepared as you possibly can be for any situation. I think that almost any job or anything, especially if there's like higher stakes involved, where somebody would say, no, you shouldn't prepare. You should just go in and wing the whole thing. Like it's, I don't know. It just really kind of goes against, I think, what a track record of success is generally. Like you're just better off putting the time in those boring moments where you're by yourself and you've got your iPad or you've got your drawing tool and you have to sit there and kind of like bang your head against the wall to try and figure this stuff out. And then leave it open for inspiration along the way, and, you know, scaffold on top of all these concepts and ideas. And when Sam watches it, or Graham, and says, what about this or what about that, you kind of know how you can pivot and incorporate their ideas and their concepts into things as well, because you know where you're kind of starting from. So you know, okay, then we can go over here or do that, or, you know, and if you have to omit, like Sam was talking about earlier, the wheelchair backstory, like we still know that, okay, then we can get these shots and do it. Yeah. So
you willing to go on record that Werner Herzog is wrong?
No. He is an international treasure. Yeah, that man.
Go watch Aguirre, The Wrath of God, one of the greatest movies ever made. All right. Thank you all for watching another installment of the Bootleg Universe video podcast YouTube thingy. Mm-hmm. We'll be back next time with more lessons from the production of Guardians of Justice.